This one's gonna be long and heavy, just like my This is not your everyday Dark 5. I'm not gonna go number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1. I'm not gonna do that today because I have something important to talk to you about, and that's exorcism. So what I'm gonna do is do my best to have a cohesive thought and maybe tell you a story and maybe start a dialogue, which is the point of this. So please, if at any point in the video, I implore you to watch the whole thing first, but if at any point in the video you want to pause it, make a comment, I'd love to start a conversation about this. Please, engage with me. My wrist cracked when I did that. Exorcism. We've all seen the movies. There's a quaint family in the middle of nowhere and their youngest daughter, Lucy, starts acting strange. Her mood is changing and she keeps getting sicker and sicker, and then all of a sudden she's projectile vomiting split pea soup and crab walking like Bray Wyatt up the walls. A fun and disturbing story to tell on screen, but what about the people these movies are based on? What about the real, mainly young girls who have died from possession? For some people, catching the devil is a very real and everyday threat. They won't even go see movies with demons in them because they're afraid that the evil will follow them home. What I'm trying to do in this very special episode of Dark 5 is explore that fear and hopefully eradicate some of it for you. These are a few questions I have going into this, and hopefully we explore them together, and if we don't get to them, or if you have any questions that I don't cover in this, please post a comment. Let's have a dialogue about it, a friendly, healthy dialogue about it. Does possession exist? And if it's not grounded in science, how do we protect it in the eyes of the law, even under freedom of religion? And if we can't qualify possession, where does exorcism lie? If you're exorcising a young, sick person and possession isn't considered lawfully legitimate, then aren't you just abusing somebody? The other side of that is that you believe that possession exists and that you have an authority to answer to that is higher than the governing law. If the actual practice of exorcism isn't your issue, the issue becomes, is this sick person actually possessed? Are you doing everything in your power to rule out everything else before you proceed with an exorcism? Who watches the Watchmen? There are quite a few examples of exorcism gone wrong, but the most terrifying to me is the story of Anneliese Michel, who is the basis for the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And please do keep in mind that we are talking about a real girl whose real family went through incredible trauma. So let's start at the start. Annalisa. Annalisa was a young girl living in Liebelfing. Annalisa was a young girl living in Liebelfing, Germany.
Good job.
Whew. By all accounts, she was shy, intelligent, and incredibly pious, which means religious if you don't know. Word of the day. Annalisa started suffering from seizures and blackouts at the age of 16. Her family finally decided to bring her to a neurophysician who determined that she was prone to cerebral seizures and grand mal epilepsy, but for some reason was not prescribed any medication. After her initial release from the hospital, Annalisa remained ill. She got tuberculosis and pneumonia, forcing her to be pulled from school. Her mother was a neurotic religious woman who constantly feared for Annalisa's soul and safety. She often used religious imagery as a way to intimidate Annalisa into a pious life. As her daughter continued to get sicker, she believed the only way to combat it was to invite more religion into her home, which unsurprisingly was a terrible idea. A year or so later, she had another terrifying seizure that sent her to the hospital, and this time she was finally prescribed some anticonvulsants. Unfortunately, they didn't work. Oh no. Despite her new diagnosis, Annalisa got worse. She started hearing demonic voices and seeing faces. She was clearly not taking her medication at the time of her death, but there's no indicator as to when she actually stopped taking it. Although I don't believe she actually took this medication, and if she did, probably didn't take it for very long. There is some weight in the fact that some neurological medication does cause hallucinations. So, hey.
Yeah, that's right.
Is this weird?
It's right there.
This is weird. At the time of her first exorcism, Annalisa had been suffering from seizures for the past 8 years and was already working with a priest, Father Alt. After many months of working with Father Alt, Annalisa was finally granted an official exorcism by the Catholic Church in September of 1975. She died just 10 months later. In the days closer to her death, Annalisa was moved from her room to a room in the back of the house so the neighbors couldn't hear her scream. Fuck. That's a heavy sentence. During this time, Father Alt made the earth-shattering prognosis that she didn't seem epileptic. That is a real quote from him on the record. To help prove his claim of possession, he brought in his doctor friend, Dr. Roth, to check up on Annalisa. Reportedly, Dr. Roth walked into the room and said, "There's no injections for the devil." That is a bad doctor. Like, what are you doing? You can't just look at somebody. That's my kind of doctoring. You're like, you're fine. So here's my problem with the whole doctor friend of a priest thing. If you ask my best friend her opinion on my ex-boyfriend, undoubtedly she will agree with me that he is the worst. Is he the actual worst? Well, yeah, but if you ask his mom, probably not. She probably thinks he's pretty cool. What I'm saying here is consider the source. The whole car ride there, Father Alt was probably like, "You've got to see this bitch." Like, oh my God, the devil is within her. And then Dr. Roth the whole time was probably like, "Oh, I'm pumped, I'm amped, I want to see the devil." He literally walked into the room and went, "She has the stigmata." She had bruises up and down her arms. Like, tell me which one is the stigmata. Always get a second opinion. Might have said it before, I'll say it again. If you talk to a doctor and he says you have the devil inside you, it's time to see another doctor. Even if you believe that, that's the thing. Even if you believe that the devil is within you and the doctor is validating that claim, that's not a doctor. That's just like a buddy agreeing with you. 1975, the year of the exorcism. In May 1975, Annalisa experienced severe emotional trauma. Her grandmother passed away and her sister moved away from home. These are two connections that she held very dear. And as I mentioned earlier, her mother was working very hard to isolate her. So these are just two more grounding forces that have left her, leaving her in the abyss of exorcisms. Some authors refer to this as the moment of Annalisa's mental breakdown, hallmarked by the development of multiple personalities now known as dissociative disorder. In hindsight, that seems clear to us, but the most rational explanation to her family at that time was possession. A few months later, we would meet Father Renz, who literally and figuratively put the nail in Annalisa's coffin. Despite her medical history, traditional illness was ruled out because she never seemed to get better. That's when House comes in. See? If they had House, then this wouldn't happen. However, it is important to point out that epilepsy was not as well understood in the 70s as it is today. The MRI machine wasn't even invented until 1977, meaning a full picture of the brain wasn't possible. Because of this, not all neurological disorders had been identified yet, so when they guessed epilepsy, that was just that, their best guess. In addition, there exists a drug-resistant form of epilepsy that affects 20 to 40% of epileptics. So if Annalisa had epilepsy, it's possible that she had the form of it that was drug-resistant. After the failing medicine, Father Renz put Annalisa through a series of exorcism tests, which is basically just asking the demon if they're there and why they're there. Foolproof to me. Annalisa broke a rosary during one of these tests, which was proof enough for the Vatican to commence an exorcism. I can break a rosary. Yeah. It's literally wood. I'm not gonna go over all the gory details of the exorcism because ritual child abuse isn't really my bag, baby, but I do wanna share a couple things. These are the least worst of it, okay? Annalisa was covered head to toe in bruises. Her knees were torn from constantly falling to the floor, and when she died, she was 68 pounds. She was 23 when she died, 68 pounds, 23. She received no medical attention during this time. Annalisa died July 1st, 1976. At the time of her death, she endured 67 exorcisms, 42 of those being on tape. So to be clear, she tried medicine once and exorcism 67 times. Okay. I feel like it's important to note here that Annalisa was as into these exorcisms as her family was. A lot of the time you'll think like, oh no, her terrible parents are inflicting this upon her, but she requested these exorcisms. She truly believed that she was possessed. Social climate. It was 1975 and The Exorcist had just come out 2 years prior. The world was on the cusp of the satanic panic. Following the huge success of The Exorcist, possession was something that was deeply ingrained into the public consciousness. Possession, despite being a 400-year-old practice, became a hot-button issue. For example, imagine a bunch of kids start disappearing from a small town after It comes out. My first thought would be killer gutter clowns. I would be down in the gutters chasing dancing clowns when there's a real killer up on the streets snatching your kids. This is exactly what happened with Annalisa. Somebody suggested possession, and then all of a sudden the medical issues were brushed to the side so they could go ghost bustin'. I just think it's important to understand the sensitivity of the issue at the time and how that could have affected Annalisa's death. The trial. This is a very interesting fight between spiritual law and governing law, which most people would say is unwinnable, and they're right. Here's what I will say. The court mishandled this case. The attitude towards organized religion in post-World War II Germany was tumultuous, to say the least. Religious imagery was often used in Nazi propaganda to help promote nationalism, so it's no surprise that the German government is a little wary of a religious-based case, especially in the case of religious abuse, even if that abuse is unintentional. In 1978, Mom, Dad, Father Alt, and Father Renz were all found guilty of negligence. They were all given 6-month prison sentences and 3 years probation. The verdict was that Annalisa had died of advanced emaciation, which could have been prevented if she had received proper medical attention just 10 days before her death. Theories. There are a lot of different perspectives you can take on this case. To many Catholics, Annalisa was a threat to modern Catholicism because she offered evidence of a medievalist form of Satan and hell. To them, she's best forgotten. To skeptics, Annalisa was a victim of religious fantasy coupled with mental and physical illness. To a select few, however, she represents holiness and martyrdom. To them, she took the demons with her when she died, martyring her akin to a modern-day Christ figure. People still visit Annalisa's gravesite to offer notes and gifts for her sacrifice. The idea of the sacrifice comes from Annalisa herself. During one of her exorcisms, Annalisa claimed that she was visited by the Virgin Mary, who told her, "It pains my heart that so many souls are going to hell. Someone has to do penance. Would you like to do penance so these souls do not enter hell?" "No, thank you," is the correct response. "No, I'm good." Okay, now this is really interesting. Have y'all ever heard of martyrdom syndrome? You probably have accidentally. So basically, martyrdom syndrome is for some reason, a deep psychological need to seek out suffering. Where they're like, somebody has to stay behind and clean, and somebody in the front row is like, "I'll do it. I'll stay behind and organize the desk." Good job, like who cares? Welcome, thank you for your sacrifice. That's martyrdom syndrome. Annalisa, in her own mind, was a sort of lightning rod for evil. Growing up in a deeply Catholic home instilled her with the need to sacrifice that ran deeper than she could really handle, as we see through her ultimate sacrifice. The horror of her exorcism could have been born out of, conscious or not, the desire to martyr herself to bring back a traditional form of Catholicism, which many people at the time believed was under threat under Vatican II, or modern Catholicism. And finally, here are my thoughts on possession and exorcism. The human brain is incredible. You can create a story for yourself so real, so tangible, that it'll make you physically sick. I believe wholeheartedly in personal manifest destiny. If you believe it, it's true. Unfortunately, that can lead to a situation like Annalisa's. I do have to say though, that's just my opinion. I believe in the supernatural, I believe in the bizarre, I believe in the unexplained, but I do not believe in possession. In order to fully believe in possession, you have to fully subscribe to the idea that God and the devil are at war, and their soldiers are demons and angels, and they've come to Earth to fight that battle through you as a vessel. As much as I would love to believe that demons are here on Earth fighting for the devil's bidding, because that is metal, my brain just simply does not work that way. I don't believe in the devil or any of that funny business, but I do believe there are things that science cannot explain, which can be super fun. The part that isn't super fun is when a priest shows up to a struggling family's doorstep and tells them that the only way to save their sick child is to exorcise the devil from her. I do understand that this stuff is just about as sensitive as it gets, and I don't want to belittle anyone for their beliefs, but I will say, out of genuine concern, if you think you're possessed or you think somebody around you is possessed, see a doctor first. See a couple doctors first. I'm gonna say see 4 doctors first. For a lot of people, their priest is their authority in their lives. But what about when that priest is wrong? Just rewatch this video. That's what happens. So those are my thoughts on possession and exorcism. I understand that this is not something that a lot of people are gonna agree with me on, and if you do, great. If you don't, great. Let's have a discussion about it. Please, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have struggling thoughts, we can chat about it. It's fine. And also, you can talk about this stuff. The scariest thing about this is that there's a narrative around it that if you talk about it, it will come for you, and that's not true. And that's why stories like this happen, is because people don't educate themselves because they fear the thing. You can watch a movie. A demon is not gonna follow you home. That's a big promise to make, but I promise you. If a demon follows you home, tell them to find me. Kick their ass. Thanks for hanging out in this kind of interesting special episode of Dark 5. If you like this vibe, let me know in the comments and we'll do it more because I dug it. I like talking out of camera for way too long. Why not, right? Don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and turn your notifications on. You see the little bell down there? You just turn the notifications on, and then anytime we upload a video, we'll be like, psst, hello, Michelle, Randy, Sabrina. We've uploaded a video. I'm hoping that one of you, that's your name.